Thanks, Father Lucia. So hopefully you enjoyed listening to those readings. They're very special. I like them. And I suppose what actually caught me when I was preparing and praying for today, one is always I don't know everyone here. So I'm also always praying, Lord, give me something to say that will help everyone, because I don't know everyone. But what I was catching a lot was to look at what was a common denominator, what was something that was present in all of those readings somewhere. And the first thing that really caught me was that Jesus was dealing with people who were hungry people. Moses was dealing with hungry people. So I was thinking, okay, let's just start from there. And I think it's something that anyone can understand a little bit. Put your hand up if you've never been hungry before in your life. Never, yeah? Even when I was praying a lot about it, like something that's very universal, something that everyone has experienced at some stage in their life is hunger. And especially praying a little bit about that. Obviously, for food, there's a hunger that's really, really necessary. We're flesh and blood. We need to eat. So even in the Philippines here, like one of the things that caught me a lot when I came back here after 10 years, at our place in Pansol, we have a hunger program, a feeding program. Yeah? We don't have Hunger Games or anything. No? We had a feeding program. Yeah? So, like it really caught me, because actually in Australia we don't have, and it's not that people aren't hungry, but to a different level. Like the food there, you can always find food. You can always find food here. Actually, it was another thing that really caught me when I came back to the Philippines. How many restaurants do you guys have? When you're driving anywhere, there's just food everywhere, because people are hungry. You need to eat. It's built into our lives, that at the very heart of us. If you don't eat, you feel it in your own body. So I was praying a bit about that what is the hunger that God might be asking us to address in our own lives and the lives of others and the lives of the people that you care about, that Jesus himself was dealing with. He's a man. He was full of flesh and blood, the same as all the rest of us. So he dealt with having to be hungry and not. But also he was dealing with people who were hungry. That's what they were coming to him for in that moment. So what type of hunger we're talking about too. So I was praying that there's physical hunger. Also maybe to pray a little bit, when we have a chance to go deeper into it, we will. What about the different other types of hunger? Have you ever felt hunger for meaning in your life? Hunger for purpose. That I want my life to have something to build towards. It's a need that needs to be satisfied. And it drags at us, it pulls us, it's the part of us that asks us to respond. So the reason why we have appetites, the reason why we have things in us that are hunger, that drives us, is because we have needs that need to be satisfied. So all of us are hungry. But the difference, I suppose, what makes the difference between a person of God, a saint, or someone that we're trying to live according to Jesus, and a person who maybe is living different ways. And I found that in the second reading talks a lot about that. Everyone's hungry, but it depends on where you look to satisfy that hunger. What are you trying to do with your life? And the second reading is very clear about this. It says, don't live the pagan life. So he's talking to Christians that had already experienced what it's like to live without Jesus, and then what it's like to live with him. So St. Paul here is talking to the people of Ephesus, so the Ephesians, and he's saying, don't live your life like the pagans did. And don't live your life trying to satisfy your life with the temporary food that's not really going to last. And he says, if you do that, you're going to get hungry again. So if you think about that, I don't know, hopefully, I don't know, you're not living like pagans now, hopefully, yeah? But I don't know whether you have experienced that, living that way in your different way of your life. In different ways, I have. I was born into a Catholic family. I don't know whether we ever actually get born Catholic, but I was pretty close to it. I was baptized when I was only about 2 weeks old, and my family always had Christianity. We prayed the rosary as a family. We did many things. inside that, I started to learn how to understand how to talk to God and everything. But when I was about 15, 16, very common experience for a lot of teenagers, I started to drift away a little bit. And probably until I was about 22, I didn't take my faith seriously. And this isn't confession. Yes, I'm not going to go speak about everything that I did and whatever, but I lived more or less as a pagan in a certain way, caring more about things that are more, I don't know, chasing. In Australia, we do a lot of sport. We do a lot of entertainment. I like to go to all the places young people went to, chasing the girls, all the different things that you look for in your life that are good parts of your life. But they were also, I was trying to find my satisfaction in those things. I knew that it wasn't actually the deepest desires of my heart either, but I also didn't know what it was like to go into something a bit deeper. And when you look at it, you can easily see that in the world around us. In terms of like, how do you try and satisfy things? This, I know sport is big obviously here as well too, but you have things like alcohol, you have things like gambling, you have people are looking for different, they're obviously very sort of more sin things, yeah? But even things like shopping, even things like all the beauty products, all the things that you see out there, people are searching for ways to make their life special, make it something, and it's not with bad things, but it's like you make a god out of those things. That's what it means to be a pagan. You take away God and you have other gods, and you start to live according to that in your life. Okay, Jesus, through St. Paul, Jesus was saying in that letter, don't live your life for that. Don't live according to the old ways. Live according to the new. And I found this interesting because in the first reading, we have Exodus. So the story of Exodus, we know what's happened, hopefully, up until here. If you're a Christian, I think you probably know the story more or less. The people were in Egypt, they got taken out of slavery, and they're in the moment now of walking through the desert. And poor Moses and Aaron, who was there beside him, the people start complaining in this moment. They're hungry. And then they're in the middle of the desert and they start complaining and they said, please, actually they said, at least when we were in Egypt, we were sitting beside our pots of meat and we could eat as much and we could drink as much as we want. We had bread. So it'd be better if we were back there. It's interesting because like we can understand where that came from, but also you can also understand how crazy that is. They were preferring to be in slavery, getting whipped and having to build the pyramids, all the different things that they had to live in that part in slavery. And in this moment, they were starting to think, it'd be far better to be in slavery and eat than to be free and following God. And in that moment, they were responding to the hunger that they felt, but it made them forget everything that had happened before. And I was praying a little bit with that. How is it possible that people could actually fall back into wanting to live as a pagan once you've experienced how good it is to live as a Christian? And like I said, I'm not going to point to any one of you here, yeah, but I imagine all of us do that in certain ways. We've all got habits. We've all got, I don't know if we want to call it addictions. We've all got things that we love to do that maybe aren't the best for us. And I can speak for myself. I'm not going to speak for you guys, but for me, it's more things like I can slip into this with things like videos and YouTube, and it used to be TV, but I don't watch TV anymore, but it's more with social media, scrolling and things like that. I know actually it's not a bad thing, but I also know how good it is to be free from it, that you don't let it control your life. You don't let it actually be what you spend all your time on. Because there has been time in my life where I've spent hours and hours and hours just watching stuff that doesn't mean anything to me. At the end of the day, what do you get at the end of it? You go to bed, I've wasted my whole day. It's a waste of time. When I start to live, obviously, free from that, and you go into living a different passage where you're trying to search for something every day to make your life better, to help other people, to love, to not be selfish in the sense of it, you experience something better. But then it's funny because like sometimes you get bored. Well, I do every now and then. You get bored and you start going, I wish I could watch a video just for a while. I could just switch off for a bit. And then if you listen to that word in that moment, if you listen to that temptation, you end up going down that track, and then, well, this is me, and I lose an hour or so on two of my life that you can't get back again. I find myself it made me come to another conclusion. People who are hungry can be very easily convinced to do stupid things. And I don't know whether you agree with that, but I think it's very real. When you're hungry, suddenly you don't think straight anymore. You think more with your stomach than with your head. That's with physical hunger. But it's also with emotional hunger, with loneliness, with things like that happen in your life. When you're hungry, you start to think more with your appetites than you think with your brain, or think with your heart, and think with your faith. And for me, I was praying a bit about that. In the Bible, you can see it all the time, actually. So you know the story of in Genesis of Isaac and his two sons, Esau and Jacob. This is very visual because Esau went out working and he came into the house, and now they were twins, but Esau was the oldest one. And when he came back in, he was super hungry, and he asked Jacob, "Can you give me something to eat?" And then Jacob said, what did Jacob say? Do you know what he said? "Give me your birthright. Give me the right of the eldest son to own everything, basically, or to be the one to receive the inheritance, and I'll give you a plate of food." And imagine, in that moment, Esau said, "Okay, I'd rather have a plate of food than being the eldest son." Crazy, yeah? But hunger in that moment convinced him that, okay, it's more important to eat than to actually be who he's meant to be the leader of the house, receive everything from his father. How many times can that happen, Joe? So I was thinking about that. When we're hungry, it's easy actually to sell our souls, to sell aside the things that you actually really, really care about. But in that moment, you don't really think about it because you're letting other things come in and take control. And as I said, I'm a consecrated man, priest. So I know that I'm married to God. I know that I've got the greatest companion actually in my life everywhere. All of you have as well too. So I'm not the only one. I'm not bragging. But I know that wherever I go, God's there with me. And it's the greatest relationship you can actually have. If I'm lonely though, if I have a moment when I start to get a bit more lonely, or forget that I'm married to God, it's very easy for me to start thinking about, okay, I need to have someone else to talk to. I need to have more companionship in my life. Thankfully, I've never went down this path, and we don't have to go down. Like I said, it's not confession, but even the pretty girl suddenly seems more attractive than God. It's easy to start to slip into that part of like letting your appetites, letting your desires start to dictate your life. And I'm trying to use graphic experiences so you can know them very simply, yeah? But it happens all the time. You wake up in the morning, you know you're meant to pray. Or even actually, if you wake up in the morning, you know you're meant to get up, and then you hit the alarm, and then you snooze for a bit, and then you snooze for a bit. It's easy to say, okay, I'd rather just take it easy for a little while. I'll put it off for now, and then I'll go and pray later. And then suddenly you've gone the whole day without actually praying sometimes. It's simple to sort of let that happen. And it becomes like a stupid, like I said, it's easy to get people to do stupid things actually with appetites. And this is why fasting, for example, very interesting. Fasting is a way that the church has always proposed of developing a spiritual life that helps you to get your appetites in place. Now, I'm not saying that I fast a lot because I actually, I do a bit when I need to and stuff like that. But it's interesting, when you fast, you're actually forcing yourself to approach what happens when your appetites get strong. That's obviously with food, but it can also be with other things as well too. If you decide, okay, I'm not going to drink, I'm not going to use my phone, I'm not going to, I don't know, things that you normally use all the time, you start to experience what it's like to take that out of your life. And then you have to face yourself in that moment. What am I going to do? I really like this because Jesus, you go to his temptations in the desert. What happened in that moment? It was when he was hungry, the devil came along and tried to tempt him. So he shows us that if you really want to start to develop a little bit more what it's like to live a hungry life, don't be afraid to put yourself in that part of like fasting where you actually force yourself to face it a bit. I know that was one thing I was praying a bit with that. When you do that, you start to ask yourself, what food will satisfy me? Am I going to keep on going to the temporary food, or am I going to look for something deeper? I really like this because the people who came to see Jesus in the gospel today, which is in John 6, when people came to Jesus, they just had this experience of Jesus feeding them. So it's just after the feeding of the 5,000. That's the context of today's gospel. And then they come looking for him again. Why? They want to get food again. Yeah. But it's interesting because Jesus said, okay, what you're doing, you're talking about like a type of fake spirituality. He says, I tell you something, you're not looking for me because you've seen the signs from heaven, actually. The truth is, you're looking for me because you've had all the bread you could eat. So he's saying, okay, don't work for food that can't last, but work for food that endures to eternal life. The kind of food that the Son of Man is offering you. For in him, the Father, God himself, has set his seal. And it's nice because I in this moment, the people actually ask him, what is that food then? So they listened to him in that moment. They were hungry, but he was speaking to them in their language. And he says to them, what is it that I'm actually meant to do then? And I really like that Jesus said to them, the food or the way to work towards that is to believe in the one that he sent. Believe in God, and especially believe in Jesus, the one that he sent, who's actually going to satisfy the things that you're looking for. Because only God can give you the things that will satisfy your deepest desires. And actually any of your desires in that part. We know that, hopefully, you know that everything comes from God. So only him, he can be the only one that will really satisfy. And he will give you that bread and meat that you really need the most, that talks about in the first reading. So I was switching a little bit between the hungry people in the gospel and the hungry people in the first reading. But for me, one thing that did catch me a little bit, and hopefully I'll mention this so that you'll pray with it a little bit in this one. The people who came to Moses and Aaron, they came looking for food, and they asked them, so they asked Moses, Moses, give us something to eat. Moses himself couldn't do it. He was in the middle of a desert. The people that were there was a massive crowd. You try catering. You try catering even for 50 people and then try and get enough food that will do. How do you cater for thousands? Especially in a desert, there's no food there. So they were going to ask someone for someone who can't actually give it to them. So obviously you need to look for the person who's going to give it to the most. So only God can respond to the deepest desires of your heart. So we have to ask God himself for what we need. And I really like the second thing that I noticed was that in the first reading, the manna that God gave, that sent down from heaven, they had to collect it every single day. So if you read that again, it says that it takes out a little bit of the passage of the gospel that we'll use in the first reading on thing. But if you read the whole passage, which is in Exodus 16, it says that if they collected enough for 2 days, it went off. So I don't know if you think so. It started to become spoiled. So you actually had to collect the bread that came down from heaven every single day. So it's not enough just to collect enough for a week and then you can just keep on sitting there in your tent and eating it all the time. No, they had to go out and collect it every single day. I found this like a really important part. When you go to God, it's not enough just to rely on what you've already experienced. It's not enough just to realize that you've been fed before, and then I'm going to rely on that, and I'm not going to grow my faith anything more than that. Every single day, you have to go to him and ask him, please give me something to eat today. Give me that bread from heaven in this moment. And I found that very echoed in the gospel. They just come from the 5,000 being fed by Jesus in the desert again. And then they were said, like, show us a sign that what you're doing is, and Jesus could have said, look, you've already just experienced the greatest sign you've actually had. Like, I've already fed you. So I was thinking, like, one thing is that you remember what God has already done in your life. Think about the times you have been fed by God. And especially when you've let God satisfy all of your needs, all of your desires. Me, myself, I was thinking this morning, a little bit my experience from when I first got called to be a missionary. Not sure how many of people have heard this before, because I have preached before in Philippines, but maybe you haven't. My experience of when I felt called to be a missionary was during World Youth Day in 2005 in Germany. So World Youth Day is when they get all the young people all together. We have a mass with the Pope. In that moment, we were together about 2 million people all in the same spot. I think Mike was there. I think some others were there. Maybe I can't remember who else was there. But I know that we were there all in the one spot, 2 million people. And then the Pope gave his talk. This is on a Saturday night. He gave it in all the different languages. Afterwards, when he finished speaking, the whole crowd started to cheer, because like they were all excited. They were young. They were, I think, jumping up and down, yelling, and there was people everywhere, all different languages and everything like that. So you imagine 2 million people, the noise that was happening all in that moment. And then Pope Benedict, in that moment, turned around, put Jesus up on the altar in the Blessed Sacrament, and then knelt down in front of him. And I remember all of us in that moment knelt down exactly the same way in front of Jesus, and 2 million people were completely silent. And you could hear a pin drop in that moment. And it was such an experience for me, like a very visual and audio one, but it was also an experience of me actually realizing, wow, everyone here is experiencing the same thing as me in this same moment. And I was, I don't hear voices in my head or anything like that, but I was talking to God in that moment of adoration, moment of prayer. And I said to Jesus, how do you do this? How do you get people to experience this same experience all at the same time? And I understood very clearly in my heart, he says, this is what I am. I am the bread of life. I am what everyone is looking for. The reason why everyone was able to connect is because everyone in the whole world actually is looking for that same experience. And then maybe I should have stopped there, but my next question was, well, why doesn't everyone else experience the same as me? How come my friends at home don't experience this? How come my family haven't experienced exactly the same way? And then I understood very clearly in that moment that God said to me, because I need your life, I need you to help other people find me. And if you want to, you can be that reason that other people will connect with that same experience. I didn't understand it fully, completely, that was meant to be a missionary and a priest, but I understood it was give my whole life to him. Give it to him completely, because he is what everyone needs. That was my foundational experience of my whole becoming a priest after. But it was something, I was praying a bit with that again last night when I was praying a bit about this. But I was also saying, I can't live only with that experience. That happened nearly 20 years ago. I still feel it completely 100%. I still remember it 100%. I can still explain it, hopefully, to you guys straight away. But I also know that every single day, I have to renew it. And then this is where I started to understand what Jesus was saying when he was saying, I am the bread of life. But it's a type of bread that we have to keep on eating every single day. Now, obviously, this is why this passage is very connected to the Eucharist. And my suggestion when we have a chance to pray is really pray with your experience of the Eucharist, of encountering Christ in the bread of life that we have given to us in the sacrament. And especially because that experience that we have in the moment of Mass, in the moment of the Eucharist, it isn't that Jesus dies over and over again on the cross to save us. We understand that, you know, he only did it once. But when you enter into it, 100% in that moment, when you kneel down, when he says, in him, through him, when we understand that he actually is present in that moment as well too, it becomes present in what we're living now. We enter into it so that bread of life really is what we eat in that moment. It really does open us up to recognize that that same Jesus who saved me before is saving me again. But more than saving me, he's enlivening me. He's lifting me into what I'm meant to be doing today. He's giving me everything that I need for the people I'm living with. He's giving me the opportunity to be fed. And not only just satisfied, but also like vitalized, made more and more powerful, I suppose, in that way, so that we can actually start to see God alive in the people around us, God alive in the world. And this is another hunger that we have. And I was praying again a little bit about that as well. Don't you have that hunger? And the people in the gospel actually said it to Jesus, where you say, Lord, show me how you're working. Show me what you're doing. Yesterday, we had a very nice experience. Those who went down to Tagatai, we had an experience of seeing Hai, who is one of our missionaries, make his vows to become a Bourbon Day missionary. So it's his temporary vows. Keep praying for him. Hopefully, he's our first Vietnamese missionary. And for me, it was like a beautiful experience of seeing, wow, this is someone who God is working in really, really hard. Not just in him, his parents, or his mum was there, his sister, they shared some of their life as well too. It was like recognizing, wow, God's really working in these people very much. And I had a hunger in me saying, I want to see more of that, God. Can you show that to me over and over again? Can you show that to me in the people here in front of me now? Can you show me that God's working in their life? Can you help me to see that in the people beside me, in the people if I walk into anywhere? Help me to see you alive. Help me to understand that this is really, really, my faith is not separated from my life. It's one and the same. And this part is like when Jesus says, I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me will never be hungry. Whoever will never be thirsty. It's that saying that like we enter into experiencing what it's like to have all of our life reconciled, all of our life brought together into one experience that really, really makes sense of it all. It's why we have sacraments. Sacraments are like the physical things happening of a spiritual reality. So we need to see it, we need to feel it, we need to touch it, we need to eat the Eucharist to understand what the Eucharist really is. We need to go to confession to understand that we're really forgiven at times. On another level, when you pray, and now we're going to have this chance to pray, you need to experience that this is a conversation with God. Praying is a meditation. It's not sitting there thinking about and understanding the truths of our life and our faith. It's part of it, but it's actually entering into a real relationship with Jesus in this moment and letting him speak to your heart, speak to your life, so that your life is changed from that moment of prayer. And it's real. It's why the incarnation, God became man, is not a one-off event that happened 2,000 years ago. It's something that happens every single time you enter into the Word of God. This is why when we hold this up, it's our passageway. It's our way to enter into really letting God experience, or us experience, what God really is and who we are. So when we have this moment to pray now, it's a chance now to say, okay, be like the people in the reading. Today is the feast day of Saint Ignatius. Saint Ignatius will say, paint the picture, enter into the scene. Don't be afraid to put yourself as one of the people who are hungry, either in the first reading or in the second, whatever in the gospel. Enter into it. What am I hungry about? What do I need God to satisfy in my life? Where am I looking? What experiences have I had of God feeding me? Like all of us have been fed like the 5,000 at some stage. Where am I finding that feed, that food that I really want? And then especially listen to the words that Jesus said. Is he the bread of life? Is he really what will make you never hungry again? Is he the one that you actually will give you the thing that will give you the passion for life? And I really find this really special because in this background that we have there, it's from Spain. So It's from a chapel we have over in Santiago. It's a place in Spain. And it's the chapel of the crucified, I think we call it, the crucified Christ. I spent at least one of my month's retreats in that chapel. No, I didn't put this background. I don't know who put this background in, but it was very nice. I spent a whole month sitting in there in front of Jesus, looking at the cross, looking at the tabernacle, looking at Mother Mary, understanding that everything that I need is right there in front of me. Of course, we don't, when we do our month retreat, we don't only sit there and don't do anything. We have lots of prayer and people talking to us and different things. We just experienced it in the last month. For me, when you see the essence of your faith, very captured very quickly in here, the crucifix, what Jesus has done for us, the tabernacle, what it's like to actually enter into the Eucharist, having Mother Mary and the saints, all the parts of heaven that we're living towards. When you pray with that, when you enter into it, what more do you need? What more do you need for your satisfaction of your hunger? And sometimes God will speak to you in different ways. You still need contact with other people. You still need a work that will satisfy you. You still need all the different things of life. But he's the one who will actually give it to you, and he'll explain it to you in the best way. So in this moment, let's enter into the chapel. In the moment, let's enter into the Word of God. The main passages, hopefully you have them all. It's Exodus 16 is the one of the first reading. Exodus 16 verses 2 to 4 and 12 to 15. The second reading is Ephesians 4 verses 17 and then 20 to 24. And the gospel is John chapter 6, 24 to 35. I know sometimes you get given questions. If you, my main thing would let the word of God speak to you. But the question, if you want any questions, the main question would be like, what are you hungry about? What hunger do you have in your life? Where do you go? And then a little bit more on, I think, what can Jesus say to you about that? Especially if he wants to answer that hunger and thing. In what ways can you enliven again the faith that you have and really enter into it so that it becomes incarnated in your life and becomes real in every way that you live in?